or just the recording?
The recording will include the slides in the presentation.
Okay. So. Yep. And I can email the slides to anybody if they want them as a PDF or whatever as well. So, okay. Yeah, well, let's go ahead and get started. So Joe Collins is a consultant for the Iowa Department of Education. I recognize a lot of these names, having worked for Iowa Workforce Development for a number of years here in the Des Moines office. So happy to see some of you either in different positions or, kind of progressing in your careers, or maybe even move to different organizations. So happy to kind of circle back around. The AIWP conference is always kind of every year my chance to see some of our old friends and to make new ones. So although we're not in person, I absolutely hope that we can make some connections based on our conversation here today. I am going to be hitting you with kind of a lot of information very, very quickly. Throw some questions in the chat box. We'll try to get to them kind of as they come up. But like Bree had mentioned, this presentation is being recorded and will be posted on the AIWP site. And I'm happy to have conversations with anybody offline about anything that maybe comes up or to go into further detail. Pretty much everything I talk about today is available to the public already, and I'll kind of go through how to find that information. So nothing is necessarily unreachable to the general public, and definitely as our workforce partners, you would have access to that information. So anybody who has not put their info in, go ahead and do a quick virtual intro in the chat box. I appreciate it, just kind of seeing who we have on the presentation here today, and we'll maybe go ahead and get started. We'll be talking about, as the description kind of alluded to, we'll be talking about a number of different initiatives that we've implemented here at the Department of Education. I work for a specialized subunit that works in community colleges and workforce preparation. So I don't actually do quite as much with the K-12 world. It's more so the community colleges, adult education, the adult population, the post-secondary world. And I bring with me, like I had mentioned, a lot of my background and experience in the workforce development world through some work with Iowa Workforce Development. So I use a lot of that as a lens as we're developing some of these materials and these efforts, and absolutely much more to come with that as I provide some examples. But we're going to do kind of a down and dirty, a little bit about career pathways, work-based learning, data analytics, a little bit about sector partnerships as well. That's one of my primary areas of focus. Down at the bottom of this slide, you'll see a website or a redirect, sectorpartnerships.educateiowa.gov. That will have all of the information you're going to see here today. So if you jot that down, or if you just want to shoot there, if you just Google Sector Partnerships Iowa, it'll probably come up. But a lot of this information is also available directly on the Future Ready Iowa site or the Clearinghouse for Work-Based Learning Future Ready Iowa site. So that's clearinghouse.futurereadyowa.gov. So we'll go through kind of an overview, some initiatives, some processes and procedures, give you a little bit of background of how we do these things, and then some next steps and recommendations. And like I said, I'm kind of a fast talker, those of you who know me, but a little bit more about my background. So I already divulged that I have a little bit of public sector background in workforce development, but I took kind of an indirect route to get here. So I began kind of my I don't know, adult life, I guess you could call that, of going to Iowa State University to be a veterinarian. Go Cyclones. Obviously, I am not a veterinarian, so something happened along the way. Well, I found out pretty quickly in that first year that I did not actually want to be a veterinarian, because I had to put my hand where? In a cow? Like, that wasn't what I thought it was, right? I didn't read about this. This isn't what I signed up for. So I changed majors a number of times in college. I was on the 5-year plan, and I've got the student loans to prove it. So I went into environmental science, then I went into computer science, then I jumped over to the College of Business, did a couple of things, ultimately ended up in marketing, international business, and Spanish. Studied abroad in Spain. Great time, but again, 5-year plan, which unfortunately is more common than it used to be. Lots and lots of students are taking longer than 4 years anymore to earn their degree. So upon graduating, I kind of took over the world. I made $1 million. Not exactly. That isn't me. I don't think I've ever been that tall or skinny. But I worked in the private sector in a number of different roles, still trying to find what I wanted to be when I grew up, still testing out careers. So I did quite a bit in account management, project management, a little bit in HR, marketing, kind of sales stuff. Bouncing around. And then eventually had kind of an aha moment that said, I want to be proud of what I do. When I'm at a party or at a workforce event or something and somebody says, what do you do for a living? I don't want to have like a visible side because I don't want to talk about my job. So I did a little bit of soul searching, went back to school to get my master's degree in adult continuing and occupational education with an emphasis in academic advising, because I wanted to help other people find what they were passionate about so they wouldn't be bored with their jobs and enjoy what they do and so forth. So Earned that degree, kept a Big 12 at Kansas State. Found a job as a Promise Jobs training facilitator at the office here in Des Moines. So worked there for about 3.5 years. And then this position opened up here at the Iowa Department of Education, like I mentioned, in that kind of specialized subunit, a small group here within the Department of Ed, helping with sector partnerships and work-based learning and career pathways. So been doing that for almost 4 years coming up now. It's kind of hard to believe, particularly in our current environment. It seems like the days just are flying by, but have been able to really merge a lot of my private sector experience with my public sector passion and drive for education, and a lot of that interest that I hold within this world of helping people find what they want to do. So unfortunately, although I maybe have, it says unconventional, this has become conventional. I know definitely as workforce advisors and within the workforce world, you speak to a lot of people who have taken quite a while to get their degree, or they go back to school. And then the student loans just start piling up for degrees that they maybe do not end up using. So again, I use a lot of my personal background as a lens when I'm talking about career pathway and workforce preparation and so forth, because I want to try to make sure that our new population doesn't make some of those same mistakes. I don't necessarily regret the way I did things, but testing out careers in college is a very expensive way to test out careers, and not one that I recommend. So I'm sure everybody on the call is aware of Future Ready Iowa, but just a quick shout out. Everything that I'm talking about today is in support of the Future Ready Iowa initiative. If you haven't been to their website lately, I would strongly recommend checking it out. They're always posting updates and success stories, and lots of different types of funding that's available that you might not be aware of, either from a scholarship, so the job seeker world, or the Employer Innovation Fund to help support our employers in some of those developments or strategies. So I'd strongly recommend checking out lots and lots of resources. And like I mentioned, all of the stuff I'm about to talk about today is on that site, with a little bit of a caveat from the data analytics, which we'll get to near the end of the presentation. But all the career pathways and work-based learning toolkits and a bunch of that info is directly on the Future Ready Iowa site. So what the heck is a sector partnership? We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about sector partnerships. I've done presentations in the past about these, and these can last a long time. But at the end of the day, a sector partnership, or a sector board, as they might be referred to within your community, is when a group of employers from the same industry or sector come together to collectively address their workforce issues. That's generally around the 3 areas you see on the side over there, what we might call talent attraction, talent development, and talent retention. So how do I attract that skilled workforce? How do I develop a skilled workforce? And then how do I keep them once I have them trained? And that can be within the actual industry, or it could be in the community or the region. We see a lot of those issues where we maybe train somebody in our community, then they leave. They leave the state, they leave our county, they leave our city, whatever, creates a lot of problems. So you'll see a lot of the groups really rally around those 3 primary areas. We try to promote a model where the business and industry is leading those efforts. So coming up with those goals as a group, what is negatively impacting us? And then around the outside, you'll see of this kind of generic kind of gear drawing. Support partners are invited to those events or to those initiatives to help support those employers with those efforts. If you go to sectorpartnerships.educateiowa.gov, there's a ton more information about them. There's toolkits about them. We did a 5-part series webinar with a national consulting group, the Next Generation Sector Partnerships team, last year, 5 90-minute videos about sector partnerships. So you would get way more information and much more detail about them at that point, as well as a map of where they're located in Iowa. Lots of other information. So I'd strongly recommend checking them out. Our workforce development partners are, of course, a critical and key component of these local initiatives. A majority of them, I will say, are generally at least administratively managed by somebody from a community college. But I try to stress that the local Iowa Work Center and our local community-based organizations who are working in workforce development need to be at that table. If you want to get anything done, right, if we want to just have a conversation about what to do and how to do it, then that's one thing. But if you actually want to get stuff done, take care of business, we need to have a larger collection of support partners at the table. Like I mentioned, I guess I already got ahead of myself, but if you check out on our website, it's also on our YouTube channel, Iowa Sector Connect is what we call it. You will see all of these 5-part videos. I know some of you were actually on those videos last year when we did them. Something else I wanted to point out on that site is we have bi-monthly calls with these sector partnership groups, at least the facilitators of them. So you can go back through almost 3 years of notes at this point and just see what different industries are doing across the state, how they're interacting with their employers, how they're, hosting events, what are they struggling with, that sort of stuff. And so I just will have a caveat beginning here in 2020 when the kind of pandemic hit. Some of this kind of took a little bit, came to a screeching halt, as I'm sure a lot of you found out with employers. So you won't see as many notes posted for 2020, or that I've honestly just gotten a little bit behind on posting them because of other stuff that's been popping up. But I'd recommend checking them out just to get a general idea of what they're working on, what they're talking about, and so forth. And again, to see if there's anything in your local community, a local group, and so forth. So let's transition a little bit. Like I said, I'd love to talk about sector partnerships with you in greater detail and how to get involved, but just time permitting. Let's talk about careers and career pathway. Now, in your experience, you can either throw this in the chat box or we can unmute in an organized manner. How do we find out about careers? How are you finding that a lot of your participants learn about careers? And I will say maybe not the most accurate. So go ahead and throw it in the chat box. Or if we want to unmute and just give me some ideas on how your job seekers or your students or whoever are finding out about careers or occupations. Okay, in high school, social media, yep. Online, sure. Job fairs, absolutely. Friends and family, yep. The Workforce Center, yes. Hopefully, right? Yeah.
I didn't get it.
Hopefully people are using those resources. Okay, VR. And I kind of said tongue-in-cheek because hopefully they're getting them from these valid and accurate resources. But unfortunately, a lot of them find it through entertainment, unfortunately, right? TV shows, I would say, primarily. Even a younger audience that maybe doesn't watch as much cable television, they're still being shown somebody who works as a police officer or fireman or nurse. And then they're kind of, it forms an idea or a metric, a profile of that occupation, even though it might be horribly different here in the state of Iowa, or just really played up extremely to the, the extreme level for entertainment purposes. So unfortunately, we've got like Grey's Anatomy, which is how doctors and nurses, do things. Of course, it's not, right? It's a TV show. It's a soap opera. Law and Order, and we've got NCIS, and when I worked for workforce development, if I had a quarter for every time a young person told me they wanted to be like crime scene investigator, but then you go through what they actually do and it's not all that exciting and there's blood and, all sorts of body fluids you got to deal with, that changed their mind relatively quickly. But you can live in the swamp and shoot alligators. That's a TV show. I can do that. I learned about that career. I can go, on this crab fishing expedition and maybe die, and that's fun. And I can be SWAT. It's exciting all the time, and whatever. This show is absolutely disgusting. No offense, but you can pop pimples apparently for a living if that's floats your boat. Go for it. But like 911, there's shows about everything, cooking, living in the mountains, moonshining. And one of my personal favorites, if you want to go into barns and find stuff and pick them and then sell it or whatever. Of course, these are entertainment, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't watch them. So you see a lot of things that are really pushed to the extreme level, or that you're only seeing the good stuff, right? There's hundreds of shows about flipping houses and flipping cars and fixing things, and these professionals make it look so easy, but in reality, that's maybe not how it works, right? So unfortunately, we're getting a lot of bad info, whether we realize it or not, from the entertainment industry. And one of my personal favorites, we've got this gentleman here, the Tiger King, and I kind of jokingly put this up there, but I guarantee, and I know a number of you are shaking your heads, I guarantee there are people out there that watch this reality show or this documentary and have said, I want to start a tiger sanctuary, or I want to start a zoo. This guy did it, I can do it. So unfortunately, we're not using the best resources to plan for our careers, at least what I've found in some of our projects and in my background. So hopefully that's driven a lot of our focus on career pathway development to really give job seekers and students a realistic expectation of what's available within the state of Iowa, but also expand that mindset of what they can actually do and break some stereotypes and pull down some barriers that they maybe have, or myths, or just misconceptions of that industry, particularly within Iowa, and sometimes even in their own backyard about what it means to work within that industry. So at the end of the day, a career pathway is really just showing progression from an entry-level position to a mid-level to a senior level. So I know a number of you have worked with some of your participants or job seekers or students on career pathway development. These are some templates that we have available in one of our sector partnership toolkits, as noted at the bottom down there. But a lot of groups will do like they'll do like a pyramid. Here's the foundation skills, foundation knowledge. Here's how we work our way. Somebody might say, I want to be a surgeon or a CNC machinist or whatever, and then you kind of work your way backwards. Or they might just want to get into an industry and they'll kind of figure it out as they go. We've embraced, as you'll see, kind of a bubble chart approach, but I know there's also a lot of impact in doing a roadmap. So actually visualizing with somebody kind of the pit stops along their journey of life of getting to that ultimate career, whatever it happens to be. So again, these are just kind of some general ideas that you might be able to use. We've done kind of the bubble approach here, as you'll see very soon here. As a general, just kind of quick run through of our career pathways projects, we try to do 2 per year. These are statewide, really deep dives into industries. So you will see these take 5 to 6 months. So this isn't just Joe Collins in Des Moines, just trying to kind of main data and then looking online and going to ONET online and then just kind of throwing it all together. This is a lot of in-depth analysis and so forth. Could I ask that everybody mute themselves if you're not talking or if we're not at a question point? Okay, there we go. Was getting a little bit of feedback. But for the first couple of months, lots of data mining, labor market info, definitely from IWD, but also MZ, EMSI, ONET online, lots of info about what careers are growing in that industry or what has the potential for growth in the future or consistent need. We pulled together industry and support partners to help us with a lot of the background and understanding that industry because Joe Collins hasn't maybe worked in transportation or healthcare or whatever. The next couple of months are spent really building out that a bit further, getting direct input from employers through focus groups and so forth, surveying and everything. So to get an accurate portrayal of those careers within the state of Iowa. And then the last couple of months are really fine-tuning, refining, gathering quotes from Iowans, pictures of Iowans doing those careers, quotes from employers that work within that industry within the state of Iowa. Again, with the goal of really trying to broaden those expectations of what it is to work in health science within the state of Iowa, as my example on the screen shows. So calling out specifically some of the benefits of that industry, but also trying to either directly or indirectly break some of those stereotypes. So we knew with healthcare, for example, or health science, the broader industry, that a lot of people maybe don't like working in a hospital. They're scared of hospitals, they're scared of being around people, they're whatever. So you'll see, it's kind of hard to see, but again, these are all available online. They're very nice, pretty digital documents. The very upper hand right side of the screen there, it goes through different environments in which you can practice a lot of these occupations. So as a CNA, I can work at a hospital, I can work at maybe a clinic, maybe community health, I can do home health, I can work in a laboratory. We thought it was very important, as we do for a lot of other industries, to pull out those unique aspects to try to make sure that that audience understands that this is a much bigger world than you maybe realize, particularly within the state of Iowa. So you will see throughout the document, in this example, each occupation will show different environments that they maybe work in, again, to try to break some of those misconceptions or stereotypes. We try to house occupations or kind of group them by family, so different types of work. So in the example here, I know, again, this is really kind of a snapshot, but this is a community and behavioral health services group. So you'll see some social work in here, some mental health stuff, some maybe dietitian, dietary sort of stuff. Where when somebody picks up a document and thinks healthcare or health science, they're maybe only thinking your more typical careers of nursing and doctors and so forth. Those are all, of course, very important careers, but you will see throughout this document talking about radiology, genetic testing, health analytics is a massive growing area. So blowing that idea that it has to be a doctor or nurse really out of the water, and then providing snapshots of each of those occupations. And like I had mentioned, as much as possible, pictures of real Iowans doing them, quotes, company logos, so that they can see, wow, and I can identify with, this is somebody in Iowa that looks like me, maybe sounds like me based on this quote, went to the same school as me, lives in my town, whatever. I didn't know you could do this with this employer that's 2 counties away. Now I'm going to actually look into this and hopefully find something that I really want to do, right, within the state of Iowa. You'll see the bubbles where we have entry level, mid-level, senior level. You will not see direct arrows between the careers, which I know is common in a lot of career pathways. What we found early on in a lot of these careers is that there is so much room for progression, even between occupation families, that we thought it would be a disservice to really showcase an exact method of getting into those careers so that a student or a job seeker wouldn't look at it and say, this is the only way I need to get there. A majority of employers that I've worked with say that if they've got somebody that really puts forth a lot of effort, they're going to do their best to really progress them in any way they need. So once they show that initiative, get their foot in the door, have the necessary skills and education, we're going to really promote them quickly and get them into whatever career they like. We also know a younger audience just likes to test out a lot of things. I'll put myself in that younger audience, although I'm quickly out of that group here. But just trying to test out new things. And, you know, an average job tenure of maybe 2 to 3 years before I kind of bounce to different careers from our younger audience. So keeping that in mind as well. You will also see throughout the document a big emphasis on career interest types. So we know that our high schools are doing this with our students. We know that our workforce centers are doing this with our job seekers. So when somebody says, I'll do anything, you know, we sit them at a computer and say, well, let's take this quick test to see what type of career personality you have. And then throughout the document, it'll actually label that so that you are provided a little bit more of a better chance of matching that person to a career that they're going to enjoy. So you don't see them in a couple of weeks because they leave because they didn't like it. Right? It's not a guarantee, obviously, but you will see that as a shout out to try to do that much stronger match by personality or interest type. Like I mentioned, we do roughly 2 of these per year. We've done quite a few. We did IT, energy, manufacturing. You just saw health science. Last year, we did one in transportation, distribution, logistics that's on the screen, but also the building trades. We just wrapped up an update to IT in July, actually, that rolled out, and we're just kicking out on my next screen. We'll talk about something for business and financial services. So we try to focus on maybe not every type of career, but a lot of them that are have a lot of misconceptions or are misunderstood by our job seekers and students in the state. So transportation is a big one. We know there are lots and lots of distribution centers opening up, warehouses. This industry is quickly changing with advances in technology, but we know it's a rather large employer in Iowa, so we wanted to do our due diligence. I should mention, I don't think I did on the other one, but at the bottom of the screen, you'll see our project partners that we collaborate with. So again, this isn't just the Department of Education kind of pulling this info. We're getting that direct industry partner feedback, but also the employer direct feedback to make sure that we get it right. So transportation, distribution, logistics, like I said, that rolled out last year. I'd recommend checking this out. You will see, again, those typical transportation careers of drivers and so forth, but you will also see an expanding number of logistics career, supply chain, procurement, so handling the movement and the supplies necessary to do all that. Each of these also generally has something about sales and marketing playing a big role. So it's great that you have a really good product or service, but how do you make sure it gets marketed and sold and so forth? So you will see kind of a wide range of different careers for each industry that we try to highlight. Again, I know I'm going pretty quick here, just trying to get through a lot of info, but I would recommend checking these out. Each of these documents, you can click on the career, and it'll take you to the career coach section of the Future Ready Iowa site so you can learn more. Knowing that a paper document it kind of has its limitations. It's nice and pretty. When I go to conferences, I put them on the table and there's a big rainbow of colors, so it grabs attention, but it does have its limitations. Or at the workforce center, you maybe have it on a table. It's meant to be a conversation starter to then have with that career counselor or that workforce advisor or a parent or whoever it happens to be, or directly do it myself as a student or job seeker on the Future Ready Iowa site to learn more about those occupations in my location of the state. How much do they make? What's available in terms of current occupations, but also what's available at a local level from an education standpoint. So then I can take those next steps in a much more quicker and efficient manner. You'll also see throughout the document the little earn and learn stamp. So if an occupation is apprenticeable within the state of Iowa, you'll see that pumped out there, and there are quite a few and in a growing number. So definitely wanted to make sure that people are aware that there are alternatives to higher education, or how do I get into a career versus the more common or more typical college track or the professional training track. We also have earn and learn models and a growing number of them. A little bit more to come about that, actually. Some really cool and exciting news that just rolled out in terms of apprenticeship in Iowa. As I mentioned, we just kicked off a project for business and financial services. And like I said, I recognize some of the names on here. So you're probably on my list. You've already gotten a couple of emails about this. Just kicked off in August, and we're wrapping up in December. And we've got a pretty healthy group of our trade partners on this project at the bottom of the screen there. But similar to what we did with IT, this isn't necessarily its own industry. Some of the finance stuff maybe is its own industry with banking and financial advisors and so forth, but every company needs accountants. Every company needs some finance people. So this is one of those industries or types of occupations that really transcends all industries. So we are kicking off a series of virtual employer focus groups, or we might call them roundtables, here in October. Refer to the Sector Partnership site for a listing of those and to sign up. It's not posted yet, but it will be next week. We're rolling out the dates, and the registration is being open next week to begin in mid-October. I think October 12th or 13th is the first, and then we'll do a series of 5 of them over that following couple of weeks to try to get that direct employer feedback from across the state. So if you want to be on my email list, definitely shoot me an email after our conversation, or watch the website for those events to post, and then definitely sign up. Now, the primary audience is employers. So I want to throw that out there. I really want to have our workforce advisor partners and our community partners there, but the emphasis is going to be on employers. So if we are quickly overloading the employers, so if there's like 50 support partners and 5 employers, we're going to have to look at something else. And I might have to start kicking some people out. But I would really, really appreciate if you could promote it out to some of your employer members, particularly from these target industries that would want to join and provide some direct feedback to make sure that their voice is heard. The ultimate goal, of course, being a document that looks very, very similar to the other industry projects that we've completed. And as you can see on the screen, we've got a pretty tight timeline to have this wrapped up and out by December, by the end of the year. So really exciting about that, and that's progressing very quickly. Those were some of those careers where every industry kept bringing it up. What about HR? What about accounting? What about my business office? Why aren't you talking about them when you're doing this manufacturing project? And we would always say, well, we'll get to them as kind of a collection of careers, unless it was very industry specific, then it would have been put in one of those industry projects. But really excited to focus, finally have some time to focus on a lot of those general business careers and finance careers that you see across all industries. Quick shout out to our Iowa Intermediary Network as we transition now into more about work-based learning. I know we have a couple of them on the call here today, or the webinar. I don't know why I keep calling it a call, but I would strongly recommend, this is one of the best kept secrets I feel like across the state, but go to iowain.org. If there's anything you do after the meeting today, go to this website and type in your zip code and learn more about your local intermediary. As you can see, there's 15 regional intermediaries based within each community college region. They are not beholden to that community college by necessarily any means. Their primary audience is K-12 students, and trying to be the connector or intermediary, as the name implies, between our employers and educators and workforce partners. So really being the go-between and the glue and kind of the spoke to really pull people together and provide some of that dedicated staff training in work-based learning within your community. So if you're having problems kind of getting in contact with an employer, or you're playing phone tag with a school representative, I would reach out to this group and say, can you help me with this school, or can you help me with this group, or I'm running into this issue. They might have a really good relationship, or they could probably even be your best first step if you're thinking about doing that on your own. Reach out to them. Great group of people. Don't have enough great things to say about these groups. They're also all over social media. Just within the last couple of years, they've really beefed up their social media game and this website. So I'd recommend checking them out to learn a little bit more. But they are that connection and a very, very good resource if you're kind of banging your head against the wall trying to get in contact with our employers and educators and not knowing where to go. Playing phone tag, cold calling, and so forth can be very, very frustrating. So as kind of a continuation of our Career Pathways project, we heard from a lot of employers after we did a project, or educators reach out and say, I've got students that looked at your document. They said, oh, phlebotomy sounds cool, or CNC machining sounds cool. Are there any ways I can get my students involved? Or from an employer standpoint, how do I work with my local school to get involved? If they didn't know about the intermediary, we've decided to start developing some of our work-based learning toolkits that are industry specific. So like I said, a continuation of that project, of that industry kind of deep dive and focus. There is a general toolkit out there on the educateiowa.gov site if you just want to see basic work-based learning information. But we've also done some industry-specific ones that really provide a lot of a deeper dive into healthcare and manufacturing. We had a goal of doing many more of these, a couple more this year, but it got put on the back burner kind of as other stuff came up, as the pandemic hit. And I don't know about you guys, but everything seems to take twice as long anymore when you're trying to juggle a bunch of stuff and working remote and kind of in and out of the office. So unfortunately, this was a casualty that got kind of lost, but we do plan to refocus, circle back around for the building trades, for transportation, for IT, a lot of other industries in the future. And just a quick background again, this is more of a 3-month process, but really trying to understand the ins and outs of work-based learning, getting examples, testimonials, quotes, pictures, and then really vetting it through that intermediary network, through our work-based learning coordinators within different communities and employers and so forth. But lots, again, not just Joe Collins or somebody at the Department of Ed just kind of pulling a bunch of info online and then regurgitating it and saying, kind of throwing it out there. A lot of work goes in to make sure that these are Iowa specific and that you're seeing very relevant and timely examples and data and so forth. So here are some snapshots of what they look like. Again, these are on the website as well as Future Ready Iowa. When we talk about a work-based learning toolkit, something that we found out is a lot of employers kind of roll their eyes because they say, I don't want to read like a 500-page document, right? Like, I don't want you to tell me what the Department of Labor says I can and cannot do. I don't want an exhaustive legal review. I just want some examples, and I want to know how the heck somebody across the state is doing it. So you will see these guides, almost half of them, if not most of them, are examples from across the state and lessons learned and real advice that has been provided, and like I said, lessons learned and examples that have been learned along the way, so that that employer or that educator or that workforce center doesn't make the same mistakes, or that can learn from those. So there is some stuff at the beginning that talks about, what is work-based learning? Here's some general things you need to keep in mind when you're doing work-based learning in healthcare or manufacturing. So in terms of privacy, patient confidentiality, or hazardous occupations, equipment, stuff like that. You will see that linked and discussed, but again, not an exhaustive legal guide by any means. And then, so here's an example of a project, I think it was a genetic experience day that was set up in partnership between Kirkwood and the University of Iowa Healthcare Association or program. And it goes through, what's it called? How'd you do it? What did you learn? Did you pay the students? Did they get credit? It kind of goes through, again, from an employer standpoint, stuff I need to think about, tips and tricks and advice to accomplish that. And again, even being a conversation starter. So I see this example, I'm then going to reach out to my Iowa Works office, or I'm going to reach out to my intermediate, or I'm going to reach out to the Kirkwood Community College to discuss how they accomplish this, and then I'm going to do that because I didn't think I could do that until I saw this example. I should mention that each of these documents, although it looks like it's maybe heavily focused on a younger population, there are examples of virtual learning. There are examples of adult learners. So particularly for the health science, I think I saw Marla from the northeastern area of our state. There was an example of a work experience program. That's what we used to call them when I worked at Iowa Workforce Development. But there's an example of how they worked with a nursing care facility to place some of their job participants into an opportunity and what that took. So pulling down some WIOA money, what it was, using some terminology so that employer can get a little more comfortable with it. And then again, saying, I didn't know my Iowa Work Center could do this. I'm going to then hopefully make that connection, then reach out to them. The example in the manufacturing product, I think it was at NIAC, actually. I believe it was a women in welding program. I know we've got a couple of our members from North Iowa Area Community College on here, but it went through this women in welding adult education program and how they were able to get these women into this very basic level entry into welding that they had partnered with an employer on. So a very cool example of entry level stuff, again, from adult population. You will see younger examples from the high school and even some middle school and grade school levels. But again, coming kind of near and dear to my heart, we have this adult population. How do we leverage them? How do we get them involved? So again, kind of very similar template for manufacturing, but maybe more of a focus on safety and personal, or not personal, but intellectual property. So practices of an employer using specific technology, how you need to explain that to your job seekers or your people who are doing a job shadow or internship or whatever it happens to be. But examples of those forms, examples of templates and so forth within the appendix. But again, just lots and lots of examples of different types of opportunities and how to replicate them or duplicate them. I really like this example that's shown where it's an internship of under 18 students working within a manufacturing facility. A lot of manufacturers unfortunately mistakenly believe that they cannot have a young audience within their facility because it's too dangerous or there's hazardous laws and so forth. Well, here's an example of where Emerson and Fisker Instrumentation really thought outside the box and did a lot of effort to really figure out what they could and could not do, work within the guidelines to have students working on different types of projects. Like I said, we have a goal of doing more of these projects, but unfortunately that got put on the back burner. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the Work-Based Learning Clearinghouse, or the Clearinghouse for Work-Based Learning for Future Ready Iowa. Here is another amazing, amazing tool that you may be aware of, but you haven't maybe checked out lately, and they continue to update, throwing success stories out there, new projects. This is more or less a project board where employers can work with the Future Ready Iowa staff to post work-based learning opportunities that those educators or those students can then pull down, specifically in our current virtual learning environment or remote learning environment, where they can still get that industry engagement and learning with those employers in partnership on different types of projects. So I know, again, many of you on this call are maybe aware of the Clearinghouse, but I'd recommend checking it out. They're also adding all sorts of different features. There's a business directory. So if you're curious about employers in your area who have expressed interest in work-based learning, type in your zip code, your industry, and it'll kind of bring up a list. Instead of trying to cold call or try to find them, it might be a great way to find employers who have already expressed interest. And then again, maybe make it easier for that conversation. They're planning to add an educator directory at some point. It's maybe already out there, but it's kind of becoming like a match.com, which is kind of funny, but it's matching up employers and educators and those students with these opportunities. And you'll see some schools have even begun posting their own kind of in search of manufacturing projects in Algona, Iowa, or Esterville, or Mason City, whatever it happens to be. So like I said, like a match.com. I always try to tell my workforce partners, go ahead and search out there, see what's available in your area, because you might be working with an employer who's just screaming, through the roof that they can't get in contact with anybody at the schools. Well, there might be your contact right there. It's already been done, but you're just getting the wrong people, right? Or we're playing phone tag, or connections are being missed or whatever. So leverage this tool. And one of my favorite sayings, let's work smarter, not harder. Right? Instead of trying to do that heavy lift, let's leverage the clearinghouse or those intermediaries to really help in terms of that work-based learning process and building those relationships. Last but certainly not least, this is another really, I would say, best kept secret that we have within the Department of Education, particularly from a workforce development standpoint. But we have a lot of great, innovative, robust reports out there, but also interactive charts that map community college students upon graduation. So after somebody, and you can narrow this down by county, by region, by all over the place. So once a student graduates, let's say NIAC, because they're on the call here today, once a student graduates from North Iowa Area Community College with this certain degree, whether that's a CNA or welding or, I don't know, a basic education degree, a liberal arts, maybe AA, what do they do with that degree? How much do they earn? What industry do they end up in? Where do they go is one of the really interesting aspects. Are they leaving my community? What counties are they going to? What regions are they going to? Are they leaving the state? What state is kind of poaching our talent? And it's an amazing resource that's available to really help us better understand a lot of that skilled workforce gap and those shortages that we're seeing that you might not be aware of. So majority of it is community college. That's who we get our data from, but a lot of this information is run through the National Student Clearinghouse. So you can even see where students leave the community college. Do they end up going to a 4-year program? Where are they doing that? There's more than I can really get through in the call here today, but here is another amazing resource that I would recommend just playing around it, especially if you're a big data geek like I am, but a lot of visualizations. And I always like looking just where we're going, like where are all of our skilled talent going? Once we train them, it drives me crazy that they're they're going to Nebraska or Minnesota or whatever. Nothing against our neighbors, but we want to keep that talent here. And then maybe at a local level, we might notice some outliers or some trends that are popping up that we can then focus on together as a community. If we see that we're pumping out, 500 CNAs through the local community college, but my employers are all screaming because they can't find any CNAs, they're right. That might be a problem that we need to identify. And we don't know the reason for it yet, but we have just identified it as a group, and then we can pull together through that sector partnership or through just a collaboration of some sort to try to figure out what's going on. I love using that example, by the way, because there was a sector partnership in the Dubuque area, an IT group that actually did that. They had a lot of their IT students were being poached by a neighboring state, but the employers didn't know that until they came together and collectively started looking at some data and having a conversation with one another because they thought they were just stealing from each other. Turns out one of our neighboring states, not to be named, was reaching out to these students with a very effective outreach campaign a year into their 2-year IT program. So by the time that those students were graduating at that second year, they were already spoken for. They had already signed agreements. They were moving out of the state. So a lot of those local employers were at the career fairs trying to figure things out. They were way after, they were way after the curve and way late to the game, so to speak. So check out a lot of this information that's available out there. It's free for everybody. The public can use this, but it's kind of buried, kind of hidden. And I will say, and this isn't just tooting our own horn, but this is innovative stuff that no other state is doing. Literally no other state is doing a lot of this sort of work. Iowa's leaps and bounds ahead of the curve, particularly when it comes to non-credit programs. So where somebody is taking a class at a community college but not earning a degree, we know a lot of our short-term training programs are maybe micro-credentialed. It's not an actual degree. A lot of states, a majority of states don't track that at all because it is not an official degree. So you'll see a lot of stuff out there that simply does not exist anywhere else. So good job, Iowa. We are way ahead of the curve, and we are continuing to expand this, which is what I wanted to close with here today. I think we're doing pretty good on time. I wanted to leave a little bit of area for questions. But I'm particularly proud of a project that is about to roll out here at the end of September, which is next week, hard to believe, but beginning in October, you'll start seeing additional data elements overlaid with that student program's outcome information that's already being run through Iowa Workforce Development through a really innovative partnership to match up those student records with labor and wage and employment information to understand what those students are doing and paint that profile of what they're accomplishing before, during, and after kind of that graduation or that degree attainment and so forth. Now we're partnering with the Department of Public Health on another innovative and kind of record-breaking project that is not being done anywhere else to begin overlaying professional licensure data. So once a student completes maybe a CNA program, what happens to them once they license, the actual professional license? Or a dentist assistant or a dental assistant or a physical therapy assistant or an EMT or a paramedic, all these different levels of licensure that are required within the state of Iowa. How does that play into this broader picture of our skills gap or our skilled workforce shortages? A lot, you may not be aware, but a lot of that information is housed in kind of silos by different boards. So Board of Dentistry, Board of Nursing, the Department of Inspections and Appeals houses the CNA data. So it is not housed and collected in any centralized location. We're doing our darndest to do that, and specifically to overlay that, again, with that education program outcomes and employment information to paint a much broader picture and more accurate picture using data analytics of our skilled workforce here within the state of Iowa. We're beginning with healthcare, but we do plan to expand out into almost any career that has a professional licensure of some sort to, again, paint a broader picture. We don't know what we're going to find yet. This is so new and it's just releasing here coming up. We've only kind of really skinned the surface on this first year of analysis. But an example is, if we're seeing, maybe we don't realize across the state that at year 2, maybe the second year after somebody earns, or the Iowans, for whatever reason, a second year after they earn that EMT license, we see a huge drop-off where they're all kind of bailing, either leaving the state or going into a different industry than they had originally planned. Maybe we identify trends at the state level, but also you can dig down to a local level to say, holy cow, What is happening with our EMTs after year 3? And then I can reach out to my healthcare providers or my employers or my other partners and say, something is happening. We identify this trend. How do we work as a group to resolve this? We don't know why it's happening yet, but this is something that we had not noticed because it wasn't commingling with all of this other data. Again, I'm a big data nerd. I could talk about data all day, but this is really, really interesting, record-breaking stuff and really innovative approaches that we're taking. We are beginning with entry-level occupations. So like I said, CNA, EMT, dental assistant, some physical therapy, occupational therapy. There's about 13 of them that will appear in this initial report that's going to be rolling out soon. And then those data tables, you'll see a new tab start popping up about licensure. And then you'll see some of that data kind of being trickled in throughout those interactive tables beginning next week. But then expand out further into licensed practical nurse, registered nurse, advanced practical nurse, and then seeing that progression again. Are we losing? Why are 50% of our CNAs not making that next logical step to LPN? Or why are they not jumping to RN? Or why are they not, what's happening? We're seeing that 50 to 60% of our RNs are leaving and end up working in construction. That's kind of weird. Why is that happening? Let's that's a weird trend I didn't realize. Let's take a deeper dive into that with our support partners. So again, I could talk about this stuff for hours and hours, but this is all brand new and we're still kind of learning. It's all rolling out within the next couple of weeks. And then I'm really curious to expand it out to other industries and then to begin digging even deeper into some of that supply and demand imbalances that we might be seeing across the state in terms of skilled workforce. Very good. So some next steps and recommendations, and I'll maybe shut up. I've been talking nonstop for a while here. You guys know me, I'm a talker. But go to sectorpartnerships.educateiowa.gov to learn more about these resources, to dig deeper into webinars and toolkits and career pathways, or workbaselearning.educateiowa.gov talks a lot about the intermediaries and the work-based learning toolkits and a bunch of other stuff I just couldn't get to. Some brand new, very exciting news that I wish we had more time to talk about. If you Google industry recognized apprenticeship programs or IRAPs, you'll see that the Iowa Department of Education was just announced as one of only 18 organizations across the entire US to begin offering these new IRAPs, a new type of apprenticeship program to complement the currently successful registered apprenticeship program within the state of Iowa. So the Department of Ed is working very, very closely with our partners at Workforce Development, Economic Development, community colleges. This is all brand new. It literally just came out yesterday, the press release, and we found out. But you'll start seeing a lot more about these IRAPs rolling out in terms of guidance documents and webinars and lots of information. So if you hear that term, you start hearing it kind of come up, definitely reach out to me. I'm happy to have that conversation. But I'd also just watch the educateiowa.gov site, as we'll have an IRAP section open up soon. It's not out there yet, but you'll see it start popping up soon. Check out those Iowa Sector Connect monthly call notes. If you're curious about what's going on, follow me on Twitter. I do a lot of tweeting on my personal account, but like I said, that intermediary network is all over social media as well. Let me know if there's ever anything. I'm happy to be your connector for the Department of Education, particularly as for the community college world. But if you just reach out and say, hey, I'm curious about, fifth graders doing this, or I'm trying to find a middle school in my area, I'm happy to be that connector. I might not be the person with the answers, but I'll do my best to connect you with them. And I'm always curious when you're reviewing these documents or these efforts, if there's something that you feel I could do differently to better engage with the workforce development audience, or to tweak further iterations or updates to those projects in the future, because we do have plans to really update and add things to those projects as we continue. And then last but not least, check out that map about sector partnerships and reach out to your local group if you're not already part of that project. They're not everywhere, but we're doing our best to really get more initiatives up and running. You'll start hearing a little bit more about that in the near future as well. A little bit of an expansion efforts where we're trying to push in areas of the state that maybe do not have sector boards or sector partnerships yet. So with that, I'll maybe shut up for a minute, or we've got about, I guess, 10 minutes, 5 minutes for some questions. There's got to be some. I don't know. I hit you with a bunch of info.
So could you send me the link, or send me these slides as well, because there's a lot of links in them
Yep.
that I don't think we can click on through the recording.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I'll send you the, yeah, absolutely.
Any questions for Joe?
Yeah, you know, lots going on. Open to having that direct conversation. Like I said, if anybody's curious, or if your office, we had actually had plans of doing a lot more interaction with our workforce development centers before the pandemic hit, and before I think the new system rolled out, and then so it got put on hold, and then the pandemic hit, and then it got put on hold. So I would love to engage with each of your offices a little bit further, and even get you some of these career pathways and these resources to make sure that they're out on tables and kind of, you know, facilitating and so forth. Whenever it is, we kind of go back to normal, unfortunately. But absolutely reach out to me if there are any questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Joe. This is very informative, and I can tell that we could have gone probably another half hour here.
Right.
So maybe we'll have to have you back at some point, and hopefully we can get the conference going this year if everything gets back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, happy to help. Thanks for taking time to jump on, everybody. I'm excited about a lot of this work and what we're doing to kind of continue to advance into the future here.
Great. Thanks so much, guys. And I will be posting the slides along with the recording of this webinar all on the AIWP website. So that will all be available on there either this afternoon or tomorrow. All righty. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you for our October webinar.